10 times harder than going to the surface of our own moon. Going to Phobos would only be about half as hard as going to the surface of Mars. Barack Obama is a very clever person. Maybe he has already thought of this argument and is just slowly feeding the idea of a manned mission to Mars to the American public, one bite at a time himself. Anyway, that's my argument for one of the things that the Mars Society could be promoting to the governments and space agencies of the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Now, excuse me, I'd just like to explain why this has nothing to do with the commercial Mars exploration and development. This was actually supposed to be on the itinerary, but for some reason it got left out. And so I'm going to put on the commercial Mars exploration and development movie now.
Not many people have seriously thought about how Mars can and should be developed and explored commercially in the next few decades by private business. This movie includes an examination of commercial robotic Martian exploration and how financial space mission prizes can ultimately save money for society in the exploration of the Red Planet. Also included is an account of historical precedents that have proven that ventures as massive as commercial human space exploration are profitable, with particular appraisal given to Admiral Bard and his multiple Antarctic expeditions and the historic parallels to deep space missions. I also explain why Mars tourism is a certainty way before the 2040s, and the companies that are involved soonest safely can make a very substantial profit. And I speculate on the kinds of people that are dedicated enough to be willing to put so much money and effort into paid interplanetary tours. I admit I am not a big fan of Mars. My personal passion has mostly been for serious conjecture about suborbital and lunar surface tourism. However, I also admit Mars does have a huge potential for private corporations to make a serious and regular profit in the next 30 years. With affordable transport to low Earth orbit, space tourism will explode as far as the orbit of Mars, along with orbital and lunar hotels. Also, manned surface visits will be far more common for public exploration funded by both governments and commercial entities, sometimes both at the same time. Affordable orbital tourism is already being seriously considered and planned for by reputable companies like Bigelow Aerospace. They are already successfully testing inflatable module hotels in low Earth orbit. Mars can make a vast amount of profit for privately funded robotic exploration, and humankind is at the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to for-profit space exploration. Robotic space exploration is just starting to get commercialized. The Google Lunar X Prize is the first sign. For those of you who do not know, it is a public prize of 20 to 30 million US dollars for the first fully successful private lunar rover. While government-run space exploration is still vital for the foreseeable future, the system of having space exploration run by nationalized agencies with near total domination of the manned spaceflight industry can and should not last forever. Space exploration and development needs to be privatized eventually to substantially reduce the funds to the taxpayer and to humankind in general, with multiple private corporations in competition both to provide the best service and make a good profit. NASA and all other agencies that are involved will become massively more productive and efficient. Governmental contracts made to private space exploration and development corporations can be more legally binding and not subject to constant revision and cancellation by politicians. The average American reusable spacecraft development program has changed its direction so many times since the 1970s that it has been all over the place. From the space shuttle budget being cut in half, to the abandonment of the Venture Star program, federal backing. All the money wasted on programs started but never finished must be in the tens of billions. Massive manned orbital launcher programs have now been cut or completely cancelled after significant developments by USA 5 times in its history. The longer term they are, the more likely they are to be chopped by changing political administrations. At the first sign of difficulty, politicians get cold feet and give up. NASA or any other national space program would and should always be the overall regulatory authority with regards to US and other nations' space exploration. However, the carrying out of space exploration by multiple private contractors would vastly increase the competence for the competitive spending of the funds for citizen taxpayers. These contracts could be similar in principle to the X prizes that are being used to stimulate private precedents, only on a scale relative to the level of engineering difficulty. We have had successful space X prizes. The new ones could be called, perhaps, NASA Hyper X prizes. Public space exploration is the first step. Nations have fully paved the way already. It is time for commercially managed missions to follow and fill in all the gaps to build a completely comprehensive study of Mars and all of its qualities. Human commercially managed missions can follow a lot sooner than you might expect, with more stringent deadlines and legal contracts binding the contractors to them to guard against financial loss making. Safety and mission success would also be equally stringent items in the contract to carry out any missions for the US government. Barack Obama has already directed NASA to privatize the Human Spaceflight Launcher program. Other programs in NASA should also be privatized when the success of the commercialization that is demonstrated by the Google Lunar X Prize and an efficient SpaceX manned launcher service is evident. The moment Mars exploration and development is privatized, the Mars Society should become a kind of profit-making company. A private institute like the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and start their own programs to compete for NASA contracts to study Mars in partnership with companies like Lockheed Martin and SpaceX. What is now the Mars Society can employ hundreds of people from NASA and thousands of people from the rest of the aerospace industry directly and indirectly, and would be far more capable of achieving success through dedicated management and employees with clear goals for achieving success and revenue, eventually making millions of US dollars in profits, since many of the workers would still be volunteers. The MarsSociety.org would become the www.mars_exploration.com. That web address does not exist yet. Someone at the Mars Society should claim it before it's taken. Mars Exploration Limited wouldn't be subject to entreating funding from uncommitted politicians who do not have serious interests in space exploration. Famous historical precedent of private human exploration is the story of the Italian entrepreneur and explorer Christopher Columbus. Columbus was not interested in scientific study, but in the spice trade. But there have been many others. Indeed, the vast majority of significant milestones of human exploration have been private ventures working for individuals and government profits. way, if we're lucky, the helium-3 trade will interest corporations to develop affordable transport to the moon, and tourism can follow that. However, that is unlikely since green energy is developing so quickly. One might say that the exploration of Mars cannot be compared with the exploration of the surface of the Earth. However, the standard of living and relative wealth of humans has been going up at a steady rate as well. The first private exploration of Columbus in 1492, with just 3 ships and 90 sailors, is precisely estimated to have cost 1,766 maravedis, a huge amount in today's money. The second expedition, with 17 ships and 1,200 people, should have cost over 10 million maravedis. At that rate, amazing amounts, but still entirely and immediately profitable for the individual Christopher Columbus, and in the longer term, the government of Spain. Have any of you heard about Admiral Bard? He was an explorer of the polar regions and set very interesting precedents in human space exploration in much more recent history than Columbus. The Admiral was born in 1888, graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1912, and stayed in the Navy until 1927. He learned to fly in the Great War and did a lot of pioneer work in aviation. Tried to fly to the North Pole in 1926 and attempted to win the Orteig Prize for the first non-stop flight from USA to France in 1927. By the way, if you noticed yet, there are prizes in 20th century history, like the Orteig Prize, are excellent historical precedents for today's SpaceX prizes. Bard has his attempts at exploration financed by private business as well, such as a department store magnate who was looking for and found a very good advertising subject, even better than a national race car champion or prime Olympic athlete. In 1928, Bard started his first private expedition to the South Pole. Expedition 1 included 2 large ships and 3 aircraft and set up a base called Little America. The story of the base camp and the explorations were in the news for the whole duration of the expedition. The funding sponsors were always mentioned to their noticeable benefit. The first expedition not only made a substantial contribution to humankind's knowledge of the world, but it made a very substantive income for all of the explorers involved. Also, a significant turnover was made, indirectly, for the expedition sponsors who gained priceless publicity about their goods and services. There were 4 more expeditions to Antarctica carried out by Bard and his commercial explorers. It is notable that the United States government was not involved in funding until the 3rd expedition. His second massive expedition was able to find totally adequate backing from private corporations and individuals during 1933. That is the height of the Great Depression. This fact is a testament to how good sponsors knew private human exploration was for advertising from the experience of the first expedition. Finding private financial sponsorship is also a testament to just how valuable publicity from any kind of a thrilling expedition to space would be to commercial interests. Admittedly, even a massive manned expedition to the continent of Antarctica is less effort to a present-day manned or substantial robotic mission to the Red Planet. However, the increasing wealth of the world is far greater today as well. The cost of taking the huge first step to low Earth orbit is going to be going down substantially with the upcoming privatization of orbital launcher programs. Media is more universal and prevalent in the 21st century than in the 1920s, and the sponsorship of private space exploration of any kind could be incredibly entertaining and exciting to the general public worldwide in this information age. Imagine sponsors such as Aldi and Dell getting through about every time the latest chapter in the story of a commercial